It happened at every birthday party, every play date, every time I would go over to a friend's house to just hang. It became predictable, dependable even. If the party was over at 7, at 6:45 there would be a knock at the door. If the playdate was supposed to run until 3 o'clock, at 2:45 the doorbell would ring. And a voice from upstairs or around the house would sound out, "Sean, your dad is here." But I would already know. Because he was always, like clockwork, he was always 15 minutes early. Just when the party was entering that sweet spot, when you know it's going to end, so you're trying to squeeze out all the last goodness, the knock would come. It even became a running joke. As soon as I heard the knock or the bell, I would call it $10, that's for me. And it almost always was. As a kid, this frustrated me because I wanted more time. More time with my friends, not to always be the first kid to leave the party, always the one to miss out on what would happen next. All the elementary school gossip, the video games that I could only play at other people's homes. Like, couldn't he just wait outside? Listen to the radio? Practice his Japanese with the green Learn to Speak Japanese cassette that was usually the only tape in the car? I sometimes even requested that my dad not be the one to pick me up, hoping to squeeze out just a bit more time with my mother's on-time arrival. We all have our own relationships with time. Some of us early birds, others of us night owls, some of us chronically late, others of us predictably early. How we experience time is deeply cultural. Many immigrants to Western countries are struck by the impersonal nature of time here. That if you were on your way to work and you saw a friend that you haven't seen in months, you would probably not stop for a prolonged period of time to catch up. Being on time to work was more important than your relationship with your friend. Who does time serve, anyways? Now, I will admit, I don't like being late. I experience it as almost painful. Being late means letting someone down, maybe facing reprimand, missing out on some moment, the moment it's supposed to start. Which means I often aim to be early. Often I overestimate the amount of time I'll take to arrive somewhere just in case something happens to delay me. That there might be a crash on the road, or that midway through my drive I realized I forgot my book or my computer or my phone, my keys, or something important, and I would have to turn back. It's better safe than sorry is my motto. But in this paradigm of time, time is exact. There's early and late. And in between, there's a magical moment of on time. As if early or late are not times themselves, or have somehow gone off. On time can be measured objectively, pegged to the atomic decay of some atoms or the swing of a pendulum back and forth. The tick-tocks of the clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Early, late, on time. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Early, late, on time. Back and forth. Each day, another beat. Each day is another beat. Ordinary, stoic, mechanical. Each day we wake. Each day we wake, filled with the same increments of time, the same allotment as the day before, and the day before that. Tick, tock, tick, tock. In Alan Lightman's book, Einstein's Dreams, Lightman contends with Einstein's conceptions of time and relativity. Each chapter is one day from Einstein's imaginary journal, where he imagines various worlds in which time moves differently. In one world, the time moves like a river, drawn to a common source, all moving in one direction, except for those who get caught in eddies, swirling around out of time for a moment before they're eventually pulled back in. In another, time moves faster the closer you are to the center of the earth, so the rich build their houses on the tops of mountains and on stilts, trying to squeeze out more time. Who does time serve? In another world, there are two types of time. There's mechanical time and body time. Mechanical time is rigid and metallic, unyielding and predetermined. Body time is, well, it squirms and wiggles like a blue fish in the bay. It makes up its mind as it goes along. Half the population is convinced that mechanical time does not exist. They do not keep clocks in their houses. Instead, they listen to the heartbeats. They feel the rhythms of their mood and desires. Such people eat when they are hungry, go to their jobs whenever they wake, make love all hours of the day. They know that time moves in fits and starts. They know that time struggles forward with a weight on its back when they are rushing an injured child to the hospital or bearing the gaze of a neighbor wronged. And they too know that time darts across fields of vision when they are eating well with friends or receiving praise or lying in the arms of a secret lover. The other half of the population is convinced their bodies do not exist. Living by mechanical time, they rise at 7, eat their lunch at noon, they eat their supper at 6. They arrive at their appointments on time precisely by the clock. They make love between 8 and 10. They work 40 hours a week, read the Sunday paper on Sundays, play chess on Tuesday nights. When their stomach growls, they look at their watch to see, is it time to eat? Lightman ends the chapter writing, for miraculously, a barista, a nurse, and a baker can make a world in either time, but not in both times. Each time is true, but the truths are not the same. What are your truths about time? How does time feel for you? Rigid and routine? Organic and slippery? What are its textures? Do you experience time from within or from without? Is there enough? Not enough? Does it move fast or slow? Does it change pace with the seasons of life? Does it shift in relationship? Does it ever slow? Weighed down by a moment? Does it ever stop? The persistent story that I hear over and over again within myself and from everyone around me, especially in crunch times, which feels like all the time these days, is there's not enough time. How many of you have recently thought that? There's not enough time. It's like we're trying to beat an unbeatable foe and we think somehow this time that we're going to best them and get it all in. All the errands, all the good intentions coming to fruition, all the demands that others lay at our feet, that somehow we could, with our fuel cells depleted after nearly 2 years of pandemic life, somehow tame time. Somehow figure out how to cram the impossibly large volume of tasks and expectations into the finite hours of the day. Gretchen and I have a running joke that we need an extra month in between October and November. And then when it was November, it was an extra month between November and December. And then now it's an extra month between December and January. There never seems to be enough time. There never seems to be enough time to even get the basics sorted, let alone making headway towards dreams and desires. This frenetic pace of life has contributed to the rise of time management gurus and the widespread explosion of so-called life hacks. If only you were more productive, they say. produced more, were more efficient with your time, you would finally conquer time. But, as Oliver Burkeman writes in his book 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals, the problem isn't exactly that these techniques or gurus don't work. It's that they do work. In the sense that if you follow them, you'll get more done. Racing to more meetings, ferrying your kids to more after-school activities, generating more profit for your employers, and yet, paradoxically, you'll only feel busier, more anxious, and somehow emptier as a result. The truth is, there will always be too much to do, and not enough time. And yet, somehow we carry within ourselves a persistent illusion that we can master time. Somehow move through a life filled to the brim with choices and never miss out on anything. That we could experience the abundance of possibilities and opportunities of daily life and somehow not feel overwhelmed by its immensity. That somehow at the buffet of life we could be like Goldilocks and take just the right amount all the time. It's an illusion. We will always miss out on something. There will always be too much that could be done. There will always be the seduction to think that sometime in the near or distant future, we will be able to make time for ourselves, make time for our partners, make time to serve, to give back. But not now. There's not enough time now. There's not enough time. And you know what? Thank God. If we had more time, we would risk cramming even more in. Don't believe me? Remember when email was supposed to save time? Remember when automation would replace manual tasks, giving us more time? The lack of time is actually a gift, because in its finitude, we find freedom. 8th of May, 1905, Einstein's dreams. The world will end on 26th of September, 1907, and everyone knows it. 1 year before the end, schools close their doors. Why learn for the future with so brief a future? Delighted to have lessons finished forever, children play hide and seek and skip stones on the river, squandering their coins on peppermints and licorice. 1 month before the end, businesses close. At the outdoor cafes, people sit and sip coffee and talk easily about their lives. Liberation fills the air. Just now, for example, a woman with brown eyes is speaking to her mother about how little time they spent together in her childhood. When the mother worked as a seamstress, the mother and daughter are now planning a trip. They will fit 2 lives in the little time remaining. These days, people are polite. When they order their bread, they smile and pay promptly, for money is losing its value. They do not seem to mind that the world will soon end because everyone shares the same fate. A world with 1 month is a world of equality. 1 day before the end, the streets swirl in laughter. Neighbors who have never spoken greet each other as friends, strip off their clothes and bathe in the fountains. And after swimming until exhausted, they lie in the thick grass and read poetry. 1 minute before the end of the world, everyone gathers and forms a giant circle and holds hands. No one moves, no one speaks. It is so absolutely quiet that each person can hear the heartbeat of the person to his right or her left. This is the last minute of the world. In the absolute silence of purple gentians in the garden, catch the light on the underside of its blossom, glowing for a moment, then dissolves amongst the other flowers. There's not enough time Thank God. Life is the only way. We get covered in leaves, mislay your keys in the grass, follow a spark on the wind with your eye, and keep on not knowing something important. We can't do it all. Hallelujah. We can't add hours to the day. We can't hack our way to contentment or find a magical shortcut to this fantasy land in the future where things will be different. We can only find a new relationship with time. The Germans actually have a useful concept that might be helpful to us, Eigenzeit, which roughly translates to the time inherent to the process itself. Eigenzeit invites us outside of abstracted timeline to focus on the nature of time as it relates to the tangible. How long does it take to fully say hello to a friend? Truly. Fully. How long does it take to prepare a meal if the companionships with others around the kitchen is a part of the process? What do we do when the children or the grandchildren ask to help and we know it will take longer and be messier with them? What is the time inherent to the process? Surrendering to time, surrendering to the time it takes to do what is meaningful. Moving from a fear of missing out to the freedom of missing out. A freedom that comes not from control, but surrender. Surrender to dwelling in the remarkable quality of time, where instead of squeezing out all of the goodness, we can simply sip and taste the bounty around us. The concept of time that Richard Rohr calls deep time. Captured by the writer Gary Eberle, we can slip into a realm where there is enough of everything, where we are not trying to fill a void in ourselves or the world. The boundary separating the self and the rest of reality grows blurry and time stands still. The clock does not stop, of course, but we do not hear it ticking. You've been there before. Deep time. When the world seems to stand still. Where time becomes thick and beautiful. Where in its imperfections, you still find a wholeness that need not add nor subtract anything. And when around this time of year, when Christians are moving through the time of Advent, waiting for Christmas, and we meet once again the cast of characters of the Nativity, the sheep and the innkeepers, the herald and the wise people from the East. It is at this time that we should remember my favorite characters in that story, which are, of course, the shepherds. The shepherds who contain one of the most important lessons for us if we are to dwell in deep time, if we are to embrace a new relationship with time, which is the invitation to be interruptible. Because there they were, tending to their flocks, minding their own business, where out of nowhere, bam, angels appeared. And remember, when you read the Bible, the descriptions of angels, they usually have multiple heads and are sometimes on fire. So they're, kind of terrifying. So imagine yourself at work or going about your normal day when a terrifying, fantastical being appears out of nowhere and gets all up in your business, telling you that you have to drop everything you're doing, all of your obligations, risking your livelihood, in fact, to go and find a stranger's baby and simply to gaze upon it. I mean, think about it. What would you do? Objectively, hear me out, babies don't do a lot. I mean, it would be odd for us to say, hey, do you want to come over to my friend's house and stare at their face? Yeah, well, we'll probably do it for like an hour or so. We might pass them around. They might make a few sounds, might move a little bit, but mostly we're just going to stare at them. If you were from another planet, this human behavior would make no sense. And yet, there is something that we all know, something we behold when we see a newborn's face. There is this primal reverence, a way of knowing that we are knit with something essential and beautiful and timeless. Something blossoms in us when we see that face. And we might drop everything if only we were so invited. And that's what the shepherds did. They were interruptible. They put down their plans. They set down their agendas. They connected into a primal obligation embedded in a cellular link they had with others, to strangers, to people they didn't even know. They went to behold the baby. How many angels visit us each day, asking, pleading, demanding that we step outside our well-laid plans and expectations to behold the beauty of life itself. The shepherds let go of control and were able to be responsive to the swirls and the opportunities of time, which reveals to us something essential about life. That life is not about our plans. Each day, each hour is not just another opportunity to implement our own predetermined plans and ideas upon the world and get disappointed or upset when the world has different ideas. That maybe freedom is not found in controlling time. In fact, we're not free if we can only experience freedom when we are in total control of the situation. That maybe the deepest form of freedom comes from being able to dwell in the flows of time without the need for control. That maybe true freedom is not found in the efficiency of our to-do lists, but in the capacity for us to be responsive to the community around us, responding to the relationships that require of us our full participation, playing our role in a story that is larger than simply ourselves. True freedom is not found in the doing, but the responding. Just like the shepherds, being willing to simply step into wonder at what life serves up. I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. It was summer, and I was taking the train across the river in Boston. Now, when you cross the river, you have this beautiful but brief opportunity to gaze out and see the Boston skyline silhouetted by the riverside. And I was sitting down on the train, having made this commute far too many times, and there were two women standing up in front of me. Now, the two women were engaged in a deep and loving conversation. It seemed like they hadn't seen each other in a long time. They were talking at each other. Laughter was being thrown all about. As we exited the tunnel, as we started to climb the bridge to go across the river, I noticed that the sky was this beautiful red, ribbons of texture. It was gorgeous. It was one of those sunsets that was just too beautiful to pass up. Now, one of the women turned to her friend and said, "Hey, look," pointing at the sunset. And her friend, well, she just kept on talking. But that's when she did something kind of amazing. She took her hands and put them on her friend, who was still talking, and said, "No, look," turning her body so they could gaze out the window for the brief moment, for the few seconds that we could see the beauty laid out in front of us. And they stopped and were quiet as they gazed and beheld everything. There's not enough time. There's too much to do. There's not another moment in which you'll be on top of everything. So may we be like the shepherds, interruptible. And may we have friends like angels who turn our heads towards the beauty of time that exists all around us. May we make room on our to-do lists and our to-done lists so that we can actually experience the beauty of this life. The freedom of not controlling or knowing what will happen as we respond to what arises before us. Who knows? Maybe our lives will be as changed as the shepherds were. They beheld a little boy who promised to bring hope to a people, and we're still talking about it 2,000 years later. Amen, and blessed be.